All right, good afternoon, everyone. Everyone, thank you for coming to the session. Internet TV packages is the topic for today. We're going to talk about innovation in TV packages. We're going to talk about innovation in the technology and maybe take a look down towards the 1 to 3 year future here. Before we get into this, I just want to make two quick things about the timing and say thank you to Victor, because we only have a 30-minute overlap with a marijuana-related panel, so that's good. It's good, you know, for that. And secondly, actually, this is sort of the end of the conference, but so much is happening so quickly on this topic that probably by the time we're done, there'll be some new announcement. So in this week alone, the CEO of Verizon has said that linear TV is dead, and they've made some announcements about what they might do with their 5G, their video offer that will go with 5G. Speculation that they're going to be partnering with Google or Amazon. This is Verizon for their video offer. That's just one thing that's happened this week. Some research has come out that has said that users of services like Netflix, Hulu, and PlayStation Vue are much happier than video consumers of traditional pay TV operators. Another CEO, the AT&T CEO, has announced that they're going to offer a premium DirecTV Now service or TV tier that they're going to use to cannibalize their own premium DirecTV satellite service. So this is the CEO of AT&T saying that. All that's in the last week, 10 days or so. So a lot is happening really quickly, and will continue. And we're going to talk about some of those trends today. So I'd like to just make some quick introductions. I'll have the panel introduce themselves, but very quickly about myself. My name is Patrick Redmond. I'm a principal at a firm called Altman Valandry. We're a 150-person strategy consulting firm. We do a lot of work with our clients in tech, telecom, and media on a lot of the topics you're going to hear about today, and I think this will be the 10th year of fielding a proprietary video kind of consumption survey that we're doing. Oh, the last thing I'm going to say, and ask the panel to do the same. This is about internet TV, so just to kind of know where our biases come from. We'll just quickly introduce what internet TV we consume. So. I'm a cord cutter. My family gets its video over the air through Netflix, through HBO Now, or through iTunes. So that's to us TV. Actually, to my kids, TV equals Netflix these days. That's the world that they live in. So with that quick introduction, maybe we can start here, Josette, and you can introduce yourself, and we'll get things going.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon. My name is Josette Bond. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer and Head of Research at the USC Institute for Communication Technology Management. It's quite a mouthful. So we call it the CTM. So the CTM is a digital media institute located halfway between Silicon Valley and Hollywood in terms of its nature. We cater to a bunch of sponsors who are our clients, and they include large service providers like Verizon, CenturyLink, AT&T, as well as the Hollywood studios and large technology companies like Nokia, Cisco, Ericsson, etc. My role includes overseeing a program of annual research programs that are devoted to the connected home, the Internet of Things, mobile, where mobile is going overall from the standpoint of content as well as technology, but also, more importantly to this panel, the future of media. So the Future of Media program is in its 5th year. I pioneered it when I first joined the CTM 5 years ago. And we look at all aspects of where the industry is going. And by industry, I mean not just the service providers, but also the Hollywood studios, the traditional players, the non-traditional players, the OTTs, etc. So this is an area that we dissect and dig into. My comments on this panel will also be shaped by my 30 years of executive experience at the confluence between entertainment, telecom, and technology.
Hello, I'm Robin Wilson. I'm a technologist, a reformed engineer now doing business development consultancy for what I call digital first content. I'm based in Silicon Valley. Just some of my current retainers or contracts are related to curating and publishing digital-first content into virtual MVPDs, so basically linearizing them into channels, which is kind of ironic, but it seems there's actually quite a high demand even for digital-first content to be put into a lean-back experience. Some cloud projects, cloud DVRs for some very large operators. And again, that sort of is part of the old world meeting the new, where people want the ability to roll back in time or see things that may have been played out linearly at their own time frame. I'm also involved in some ad tech projects which relate to those digital streams and inserting ads in the right place as opposed to the wrong place or no place at all. So that's my background. I also have a background in DRM and security and compression. So it's one of these thankless areas, particularly DRM and security, but and also watermarking too. But it sometimes gets in the way, and hopefully in a useful way at times. And of course that also segues a little bit into some of the futuristic blockchain discussions that we may or may not have on this panel. So thank you.
Actually, I just interrupt for a second. I'm glad that the panel's actually already ignoring my instructions. Are you cord cutters? Are you?
I'm been a cord cutter for a few years. For me, actually, YouTube Red, I hate ads, despite the fact I'm in ad technology. I will gladly pay to remove all ads, and since they seem to get everything else right, that works. And then the usual Amazon and Netflix and a few other random apps.
So I'm sorry, I forgot to say. So I am corded, right? So I still have cable, right? But I also have a subscription to Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime. So we use a variety of platforms in our home.
Cord cutter. Early on.
Wow.
My name's Cecily Armstrong, and I'm really excited to be on this panel. My career started and still is as a content creator in women's magazines with big stories, and then networks got very interested and shows got interested in how can we produce these great women's stories and interviews that are on old paper stuff and put them on linear TV, and then networks said, we're going to buy a big thing like AOL or iVillage.com, and we want to take that television stuff and we want to replicate it and produce it for digital first. And so I was sort of in on the beginning. You can call me a digital pioneer or dinosaur, it's up to you. But in any case, it was a real wake-up call when we first produced a 13 episode show, live audience, very expensive to produce, delivered it on time, and then they couldn't broadcast it because of compression problems. So early on I realized I better wake up and realize as a content creator that I need to learn a whole bunch about the pipes, about the delivery systems, about DRM, about all kinds of stuff. And so I've had one foot on either side ever since. I've lived in New York and LA for about 30 years, and 5 years ago moved home to Texas between San Antonio and Austin, which is a really exciting place to be right now. And I have my own company called Nitex Productions, and then I'm also working for Quartermoon Productions. We have 9 shows right now that we're producing. I'm the EP on one, which is a travel and entertainment show for millennials. We're cleared in 91% of the Texas market, which is about 12.5 million households on linear, and then second run and on we push to digital. Also for Noisy Trumpet, which is a digital marketing and communications firm. And yes, I'm a cord cutter. I said that. Yeah.
Hi. Wow. Gio Burton, Owns Media Network. I am a cord cutter. I have 2 young children that have never understood what cable is because they've lived off being a Netflix consumer, so big fan of it. A little bit of background about our company, if you guys can still hear me. I think it's kind of funky. We Own Zones Media has had the pleasure of actually being a content channel developer, and we built OTT services, and we also are a technology company. So we have a great perspective on both sides of the aisle of what not to do and what to do to scale your business. Right now, as a core, we're focusing on technology and how do we enable content creators to scale globally. The domestic market is pretty saturated, so how do we build solutions to enable them to deliver their content around the world at a fraction of the cost and not be so consumed with the process of doing it all? So that's a big part of what we're doing right now as an organization. Thanks.
Oh, you're up. Good afternoon. I'm Ty Green. I'm the founder of MyChoice, which is a contextual marketplace based in San Francisco. It used to be in Silicon Valley. And additionally, I'm the CEO of the Missing Channel Media Group. I am a cord cutter personally, but for business, no. We currently distribute 4 cable and satellite television networks, Comcast, Spectrum, Dish, and on and on and on. We are launching the first cannabis television network on broadcast and cable and satellite in the United States this summer. And we have a theater television network that's launching that's going to be OTT around plays. We're working on a deal right now with the Lincoln Center, getting a lot of their catalog to actually do a 8-VOD solution. We run the Beauty Channel, which does Fashion Week all over the world. And then we own the Missing Channel, which is a Christian MTV. And we're heavily involved into the blockchain. Yes.
Excellent, great. Well, thank you for the introduction. So, so this is all about the internet TV package, and I want to start talking about the customer experience that has come with this brave new world. And you know, a lot has been needed to be done to get this experience to work. We heard some comments about sort of getting like the compression right and what have you. I just want to ask the panel to kind of start things off here. What are the biggest challenges in the internet TV ecosystem which had to be solved to just like get it off the ground so we can then move into like getting it to work really well?
Search and discovery, paramount. And there's such a plethora of different services out there right now. There's never been so many choices available to consumers. So how do you choose the program that you really want, right? And so consumers tend to sample, they graze across providers, as is certainly our case. I'm surprised to see I'm the only one who's still corded on the panel, but maybe, who knows? Mm-hmm. There are still people who subscribe to cable. But in any event, so search and discovery has become so paramount that now anything that can help with that is at the forefront of the conversation. So we've done a great deal of research at the OSCTM via surveys, via focus groups of millennials and Gen Zs, and we found out that the way they discover content is really via social networks. So typically a millennial or Gen Z consumer will watch the primary screen with their mobile in their hand, and they will be communicating with their mobile as they're watching the show, right? And sometimes it's the tablet and the mobile. And they will be communicating with their networks, whether it's on, it's on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and they will get recommendations as to what to watch, and then they will implement those recommendations. So that social networks is becoming so much more prevalent in terms of organizing that viewer experience.
Is the question more directed at the audience or the content owner? What in terms of the challenges?
I'd say, well, for the whole ecosystem, either the kind of the platform that's delivering it up, or the content owner who's trying to get it into the ecosystem to be seen.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's an interesting time. We're consolidating the businesses now, right? There was so many opportunities to get your content out there, and with the likes of Watchable and Go90 and everyone that's kind of going down, it's actually getting harder than it used to be. Netflix is going to originals. DirecTV Now is very selective on their programming. So So the challenge is for anyone in this business is how do you, like you said, get discovered. We believe that the international, if you look at Netflix's growth, it's all international. So if you're focused directly on the US-based consumer, you're missing a huge opportunity as you grow your business out. But the problem is again, how do you deliver your content around the world without being so inundated by how do I get my content normalized, how do I get the captioning on it, all that stuff. So the challenge is going to be for anyone in this business is finding a solution that effectively can get their content to anywhere around the country and not make them feel like they have to be a Netflix to do it. And
But I think there's on top of that problem, and that is a pretty big problem. There's a user experience layer on top, which is, I think, with the app-based economy we have, really, I guess to use the wrong word here, but the TV platforms now, most of them, if not all of them, are very app-based, and in that respect, they're almost entirely siloed. Now, people have made, I mean, Apple and even the old Android TV had a small attempt to do that. The new one has a slightly bigger attempt to allow the apps to publish into a higher level, but nobody who has their own app wants to give that desktop or that platform away to Apple. So it's like a temporary necessity to get there. So we've got this messy situation where there is no Uber search, and people are reluctant to encourage you to go outside. Or they will publish. I mean, I don't think Netflix publishes into Apple, but HBO Go publishes into Apple. But they're always sort of it's a dichotomy of, do you let people go outside? I mean, it drills back into your app, but it sort of puts the owner of the app in a vulnerable situation. The FCC tried to fix this on a committee I was involved in about 4 years ago, but it got shut down with the change of government and everything else.
Is anybody doing this well then? I mean, so from a kind of platform perspective, for any of the providers, whether it is Apple TV or Google TV with this kind of universal search capabilities, anyone come close to mastering it?
It's somewhere between bad and okay.
It's absolutely horrible. But
Okay.
On your last question, I think the biggest
somewhere
challenge
between
right now
horrible and okay.
is bandwidth and data centers being rolled out globally. I think that's the most bandwidth, satellite, data packets back and forth, and being spread all over the world. I think and then the user experience.
I was jumping to the height, but we jumped to the plumbing. The plumbing is almost fixed, but if we all move to OTT instead of broadcast over the next 10, 15 years, the plumbing will be choking again, I think.
Well, and 5G is going to make a huge impact, I think, on our world. But on the app, it's like we were talking about, there's people, I don't know, the average is somewhere around 27 to 28 apps that people have downloaded on their phones and on their screens of whatever size.
Video apps, because they do a lot more than just apps.
Well, we're talking about viewing apps,
yeah,
for networks and such, right?
right,
So, but I mean, Google just came out with another study, and there's many studies out there that show that we really only use 3 to 4, maybe 5 of those. So, you look at, I think, networks that are doing a good job are, you asked who's doing a good job from a content point of view, and a UX point of view is really, I think, CBS is doing a good job, Fuse is doing a good job, because they realize that they have a viewer experience in-app, and then they take those pieces of content and they may cut them differently. They may, based on numbers, based on analytics from audience segmentation versus fragmentation, and they may distribute that content on a totally different platform. So, is an aggregator system better? Is that better for UX?
I think so.
Yep, I do too.
I did. I worked for years in the UX space on B2B and B2C, and every single thing I've seen, except for maybe ESPN, kind of, sort of gets it on mobile. Desktop, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
And
We're seeing some of the programmers just using brute force to try to help. I mean,
Yeah.
Bloomberg's an example where they'll just publish everywhere because they can't, I mean, they have their own app, they'll publish on YouTube, they'll publish on Pluto, I'm sure they're on a dozen other platforms, just brute force.
Well, there's
find
content
us
creators
somewhere.
that have deep enough pockets to take those kind of risks, kind of throw it against the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
But if you really want to service your audience and whatever your deliverable is, are you trying to move somebody down a marketing funnel to a transaction? Are you trying to promote a film or another piece of content? Are you trying to engage more on social media? Whatever the deliverable is, the medium is the message. Old
So-
saying, but
So
Well,
this-
if I may,
Sure.
just to add to that, so on a more traditional, in the more traditional space, right? Comcast does a pretty good job with Xfinity, right?
yeah.
So, that would be a best in class. But going forward, let's not diminish the impact that artificial intelligence is going to have. Devices, like Alexa, the Echo Dot, for instance, by Amazon, or Google Play, or even Siri, more and more will be integrated in the consumer's viewing experience. And in fact, that is starting to be the case with Alexa, with the newest internet-ready TVs that are being offered for consumers. So you're entering a really different universe, and I think a lot has happened over the past year to precipitate this phenomenon.
So up until you said artificial intelligence, to me this almost sounded like kind of Back to the Future or more of the same, because we heard aggregator, the aggregator of old was your pay TV provider, and now maybe it's Netflix or some other app-based solution, or Amazon Channels that's kind of giving you a way to subscribe to a bunch of things through one interface. So are we really just kind of repeating history here, just on a different platform? Or tell me more about what you think about AI or advanced analytics or other ways that maybe we would make better recommendations or be able to segment viewers.
Well, advanced analytics are obviously the wave of the future, right? They're here today. They're not always implemented, or they're not even sometimes implemented correctly, right? But, there is this myth out there that the younger generations really don't care how their data is being used. So, again, we run a lot of focus groups and a lot of surveys as part of my team's research in digital media. We found out that to not be the case at all, especially with millennials. Millennials are very, very intent on knowing what is their data going to be used for. And also, they want to be compensated for the gift of their data. They realize it is value, okay? They want something. They want coupons. They want, free access to commercial-free programming in exchange. They want full transparency. Okay, so that actually came to us as a shock and as a surprise. So going forward, it's not just a question of the technology. Technology exists today. I mean, I'm sure, Robin, you will corroborate that. But it's a question of, what's feasible from a business standpoint and from a consumer tolerance standpoint.
People have always asked us the question of, should you launch an OTT service? And we've always answered, launch on Amazon Channels before you launch it anywhere. Don't even build an app. Now, that's gotten more difficult because Amazon Channels is getting more selective. But in terms of sort of using analytics, we look at it, again, coming from the content owner's perspective. If you can look at metadata and look at the organic search in Amazon Channels and basically understand how the retail search can affect discoverability on the channel side, you literally will triple your subscriber base in the course of 60 days. And what I mean by that is we launched a channel called Best Westerns Ever, and one of the services had Dick Van Dyke in it for whatever reason. He didn't really associate with Westerns, but he was. And Mary Tyler Moore passed away, and we knew that the search on Amazon would be growing by leaps and bounds for 2 days based off that immediate reaction to that happening, searching out for her shows. So we went back into the metadata, pushed our search up to be more discoverable for our channels, and you can imagine that organic discoverability there went up considerably. So you have to look at it from a packaging of content perspective. and how you can use that and empower yourselves to change out that metadata, change out the images, and really use that to get the search better on the platforms.
You're spot on. We're doing that for TOT, for theater on TV, and there's actors or director. It's in the metadata. I mean, everything he just said. Yes, absolutely. That was smart too, changing out from Mary Tyler Moore. Yeah, that was a good move. Thanks.
So a question about that, because about going kind of direct to consumer or going through some intermediary. For those of you that are sort of representing content, can you get that sort of the information, I suppose, if you're not going direct, going your own way? Do you lose something by making that decision to go direct through to the consumer?
So when you have a deal with an MVPD, they will ask typically for what your metadata is going to be, and you can give them all that, and then they transcode it and push it through their boxes or whatever they're going to do. When you have a pure digital play, it's a whole lot faster. You can change things on the fly from your mobile device to address whatever the AI or the analytics needs to be on the fly.
I'm actually thinking kind of the reverse, like sort of who's viewing your content and how long they're viewing it and what else they're viewing.
That would depend on the receptacle device that they're viewing it on. Mobile is the easiest, TV the hardest.
Right. For obvious reasons, one-on-one mobile.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that, the audience, from a content perspective, the audience, they're the programmers. But the content creators and the distributors need to help the audience. But the metadata does that. You can sort of tell and direct the searchability side of it, which ultimately is the consumer side of it. And I think what a lot of companies don't do is something that's pretty simple, which is manage their metadata.
Yep.
And, there's a lot of, from boutique to extremely large, very interesting companies out there that are measuring data, and from the SAS side to, other sides that, are making a really good living and a lot of revenue from delivering that information. I would say to answer your question, if somebody kind of starting out and trying to get out there, there's a lot you can do on your own, so watch some YouTube videos about how to get your SEO going.
Yeah, but I'm always struck though. Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's true. Just for starting only. Yeah.
I'm always struck, though, by these conversations about metadata and gathering the data and all that, how helpful it is. And it is tremendously helpful. I mean, how can you target anything without the data? But I'm also struck by how do you make money? I mean, how do you convert, gathering all this data into a play that you can sell to Madison Avenue, to advertisers? I mean, after all these years, I remember when I was at Cisco, 10 years ago, we were talking about hyper-targeted advertising, and we were, discussing that with clients and all that, but hyper-targeted advertising is still in its infancy 10 years later, right, in terms of significant numbers, right? So, unfortunately, there's an issue there from a business standpoint. Yes, it behooves you to have the data, but how do you take the leap?
So I've been involved with a search and recommendation company for a while, and yeah, it's a challenge because it's somewhat anecdotal proof, but the typical way you go about it is a kind of an A/B test, with and without the recommendations pushed to one group or not, because you can usually segment it to certain devices or certain people. And the thing that you look for is a proxy to that, because it's the only thing you can really measure these days, which is churn. And you need a long, 6 months or a lot of people because it's statistical variability. But if you do that properly, you get numbers in 10, 20% churn reduction. So then it's up to you to convert that into value, because there's a acquisition cost of a subscriber. Obviously, that's a simple way. But you can also use that as a proxy to add targeting and other ways it adds value. So it's not easy to do, and it's hard to prove it, but you can do it. You can try to do it at least. Yeah.
But I think from your really great question, or your comment rather, I think what's your business model before you create the content?
Right.
What is the business model? Is it brand integration completely? Is it, let's take it back a step further. Is it scripted? Is it unscripted? What's the format? Was it, So all of these things, yes, I think there's something to be said culturally for sure, and especially in cause-related for, creating content for the artistic value of doing that. And I think that's should never go away because the storytelling should always be primary. But there's nothing wrong with building a business model around a story you want to tell. So that, I think, is how to smartly monetize. And this isn't new. This is not a new concept. But if you were going to, create a product that you wanted to sell on Amazon, you'd put a business model around it. So I think that's it. Is it? Please God, I hope not pre-roll, post-roll. Is it? Is it an outright sell to Netflix or another SVOD? Is it, what is it?
I got a concept. We do 4 different unique areas: curation, personalization, community, and commerce. Every single piece of content should have those 4 areas connected to it. Because, especially on the personalization, or an event, something along those lines of every single thing, because that can gather individuals around that, and their friends will tell their friends, and the whole social effect and whatnot, and then always have something to sell to or offer to your actual people that are engaging in that content. That's on the direct-to-consumer side. On the Madison Avenue side, all the data that's collected, you can use psychographic data to show General Mills, Procter & Gamble, Unilever, one of their brands, McDonald's, that this particular group of individuals on these days consume your products, and we have this quantitative data that cannot be got from a focus group, but that to show this is who's consuming your product. Spend more money here with us to do that.
Can you repeat those?
Curation, personalization, community, and commerce. Personalization, curation, you may have a body of work, or you may have a piece of content that will be shown on different channels at different times, different distribution mechanisms. Personalization, whether it's an email or some type of back and forth relationship with your audience that is now engaging them. Community, have an actual offline real world event where individuals who love this particular type of content or something, they want to gather together. Human beings, they still like their phones, whether millennials, whatever, but people still will pay to watch something on TV and then pay to come together to an actual event, to be together, to watch the same thing on a larger screen. And then at that place, digitally and in place, have things to sell. Tchotchke stuff, T-shirts, hats, whatever. Yeah.
Ty, there will be a test on that at the end. We'll hope you all wrote it down. Ty, can you think of any examples off the top of your head of other organizations that are doing any of these particular your 4 pillars here, doing them particularly well?
The Alamo Draft House. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. It's a big, huge event. TCM, they push their whole thing.
Red Bull TV does a good job of it
Yeah.
as well. With that jumping off when you jump from space, that was really using that event to drive awareness to the channel.
And it's more than just a traditional CPM. Most digital dollars on a CPM are very, very low. So you're not making lots of money. That's why I work in TV, where the CPMs are considerably higher. But it's not either or. It's like we have the crack crab and the lobster. It's not. We kind of use.
Which one's lobster?
We use digital primarily for marketing, curation, and community, and a little bit of commerce, and then television, traditional TV, with big ad budgets and dollars for, real money for the exact same content.
Actually, I think Twitch is doing that.
Yes, Twitch is hot.
Twitch
In
is
terms
doing
of
it.
what you're describing, there are all the components.
Does
are
everyone
right
know what
there.
Twitch is?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm involved in some of the content curation for some of these digital first channels, and they're going to virtual MVPD.
So speaking of Twitch, My Choice is rolling out the first cosplay marketplace. If anyone who plays knows cosplay is, yes.
But the interesting thing there is from an ad dollar perspective, there's a couple of things that are hugely in your favor with these virtual channels, if you like. First of all, you have total editorial control. You can do what the hell you want,
You sure can.
including put graphics over, squeeze anything you want, any place you want, anytime you want, and just decide to do it now. And you don't have to ask anyone's permission. And the other thing is just without any maths or science, guess what? The demographics are extremely well known and self-selective and extremely valuable.
Very self-selective.
And you don't have to do anything
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you've gone from a loss-making digital output to actually a pretty rich seam
Yeah.
that is relatively easy to manage.
It seems like when I came here in October, or when I came to LA, individuals were talking about, well, I'm going to put my YouTube channel together, and I'm going to push my content out, and YouTube's going to pay me pennies, and I'm going to work really, really hard, and we made this for $10,000, and we may have made, $600, and it'll do, and I don't know, I just like money, I'm strange that way.
So early in my career, I was told by a very famous man in the industry at the time that in Hollywood there are two things that matter: money and distribution. And that concept can actually be applied to what we're talking about. Distribution is how many eyeballs can you federate ahead of doing something significant with your content. That's your footprint right there, right? Money obviously speaks for itself. Advances and guarantees from Netflix are very, very enticing and addictive. Which is actually good and bad, but that's another discussion.
So I want to switch focus a little bit and maybe take the service provider perspective, like the pay TV provider of old, or the virtual MVPD of new. And a lot of what we've been talking about. I want to hear your thoughts on kind of what does that all mean to them and their business model, because it's a little harder to do that when you're dealing with an existing franchise of programs, and customers are used to getting content a certain way. So what are the...
I think you actually mentioned it earlier, I think, in passing. I think AT&T or DirecTV is the only one that's sort of come clean and honest and admitted that they are planning to cannibalize themselves. I mean, Comcast will lie to you and tell you, no way in hell, we've got this great cable business that's going to last forever, but they're probably figuring out that might not be true. But I think DirecTV just this last week came out, or this week actually came out and said, we're going to kill ourselves and reinvent ourselves. So I think the other guys are not far behind.
Yeah, so specifically the announcement was AT&T said they're going to produce a DirecTV Now premium bundle that they want to take subscribers off of the satellite service and give them this kind of over-the-top equivalent. And they said it will be, it'll have better margins, they said.
Well, it's also a very, very clever strategic play. So, you have basically, you're limited to your service area to begin with. Then you buy DirecTV, which has a national footprint. And then you transform DirecTV into a virtual channel package.
Yeah.
And you have essentially the entire United States.
Correct, and you don't have to worry about anybody else's pipes.
Right, so you're not in region versus out of region. So it's actually a superbly executed plan, and I think it has a lot of legs.
Good kung fu.
I think internally for companies like AT&T, it's a smart move. I think to the consumer, I don't think they care about skinny bundles, and I just think they don't care. I think if somebody wants to watch a show, they're going to find that show and they're going to watch it. And I think what they do care about, they don't maybe I'm not dumbing down the audience at all. I'm just saying they know that it's buffering. They don't really know why. I don't think that they care why so much. They just want it to stop buffering. And so, can we put that on a T-shirt? Stop buffering. So, in any case, I think that there's a disconnect between the audience and the provider, right?
Well, there are numerous disconnects. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. It came out Netflix's valuation's bigger than Comcast, right? So they were a technology company first before they were a content company. So their ability to understand through their A/B testing, we spent a lot of time with them, is like nothing you've ever seen. So as much as I respect the AT&Ts of the world coming out here and launching a DirecTV Now, they do buffer and their streaming's terrible. So effectively, the MVPDs, the Hulus of the world, it's going to come down to that video experience and your effectiveness of streaming on it. I don't care how good your programming is, really.
Yeah, cable is not dead, okay? I mean, it's losing consumers, most of us up here, but it's absolutely not dead. So, and also, this business of skinny bundles, to pick up on my friend there, okay, what you were saying about the flawed consumer proposition. So, skinny bundles was an attractive idea. You offer a package of channels that costs $25 to $75, where the most popular channels are grouped, etc. You target different bundles, etc. But basically, consumers, they want the channel of their choice or the program of their choice. You know, they feel shortchanged by a skinny bundle. And when they start having kids and the plethora of programming that they're traditionally used to be able to access is no longer there, they feel even more shortchanged. And not to mention that the skinny bundles are not always available on all their television or set-top boxes at the same time. So the industry is still hesitant there. So it is a palliative move towards deflecting cord cutting on behalf of the service providers, but it hasn't been very compelling. It's also a defensive move against companies that are deploying skinny bundles that are already in the OTT space, like Hulu. Obviously that's more and more of a threat going forward, or YouTube Premium.
I think cable and satellite TV, your direct, Comcast, Spectrum, it's not going anywhere. It makes a lot of money. The reason why we like linear or live TV, it makes a lot of money. You get two pieces of revenue off the gate. You get your subscriber dollars that you, based on the deal that you negotiate with the cable provider, and then you get all your ad dollars, which are like $15 to $50 CPMs. We're talking $10 to, $75,000 per 30-second commercial, times 12 for a half-an-hour spot. That's not going anywhere. So when I hear people talking about, internet, skinny bundles, and I was like, you're broke.
But
I think what the advantage of Netflix is their data that they are getting from the consumer is not driven by advertisers. So they're not selling and doing it that way. It's literally off of your consumption and what you're watching. So when you're in a subscription on demand environment that's controlled, that content that's actually being produced for you is literally being listened by them through your watching habits. So I think the cable companies, their survival is going to be dependent on, and they're never going to want to hear this, is that advertising-driven data collection is going to affect them growing, unlike Netflix.
Well, and you've got Nielsen. Anybody here from Nielsen? You've got Nielsen that's driving that
yeah, and Nielsen,
data. I mean,
Nielsen just got rid of their last market with diaries in the last few months.
So I mean, there's
puts them in context, at least for me.
605 is a really interesting company, and I think that they may have Ben Tata may be here somewhere in the conference.
Yesterday, I think.
But I think a company like that would be supportive to, keep cable around because, the 30, all this debate about is the 30-second commercial going away. My show's on linear right now. The deal that we made was, and we like linear, but we like it as part of the distribution package. For First Run, the deal we made was, we share a commercial time, 50-50. which ain't bad. We're okay with that. And we're on all major networks. And, so we're fine with that. But also our advertisers, we love them, but they're not so concerned with that, drilling down as deep on the data as they should, because it's still that mindset that whatever Nielsen is reporting is,
Or ComScore.
Yeah.
or what
But
ComScore is reporting.
an observation on what you were saying earlier. Yeah, sure, the ad dollars are pretty low, but the velocity of the rate of change is multiplied because the sub count is going up. It's not a huge amount, but it's going up at a healthy rate for the virtual MVPDs. Let's
So I go talk to Saatchi, any Omnicom, WPP
Yeah.
folks. I walk in, I might say, all right, we have these digital delivery things that are going to play here, and what a CPM is on a digital play. Oh, well, we'll start with we'll give you 3 cents or 4 cents
yeah.
per thousand or something.
But that number is starting to go up, and the number of that number is starting to go up. So I think over time it's going to.
True.
It's going to.
I'm walking with a brand new show, no upfront, never been seen, no stars, first run, walking out with a $20, $25 CPM, which can translate to $35,000, $45,000 per commercial. Brand new,
Hard to beat.
no stars,
bad, yeah.
nobody. Is
Yeah.
so it's not either or, it's just and.
Yeah.
So this is sort of, again, I guess, back to the future a little bit, because it sounds like from your all's perspective, this shift is happening very, very slowly. How far away is the tipping point? Is there a tipping point?
Well, I kind of thought it was starting like this year. Now, there's different definitions of the tipping point. There's the point where the ad agencies actually noticed, as opposed to just do what you want, which is kind of where you were coming from, just putting a token number. I think it's starting to happen on some of the bigger networks.
At the new fronts.
Now, if you define tipping point as where the 50-50, that's way out there. Way out there. So, yeah, maybe the tipping point's the wrong word. It's the beginning of the change, or the acceleration of the rate of change. I think it's now.
Right, and there are improvements made in standardization, in back-end analysis of data. I mean, that whole industry is moving forward very fast, which gives some comfort to advertisers. Also, there's a whole generation of advertising executives who's retiring. And the new guys and your new gals that are in their jobs right now know that digital is very much the wave of the future. It's present. That's how they consume media, and so the turning point is going to occur also by virtue of that executive change.
If you look at the model for so you got your brands, you got your advertisers, you got your publishers, and you got your merchants. So a brand, Tyson Foods, Unilever, they say we have $500 million to spend on advertising, and they might choose a WPP agency or however they do it to say, all right, you're going to allocate your dollars on search, display, organic, whatever. You have all this money to spend. Those agencies have to then go out and find the right pieces of campaigns to put together, pick the right publisher that is going to go out, and then come back with some type of slippery science data saying, these many eyeballs saw your product. A brand still wants to know, how does that correlate into a one-to-one transaction for an ROI for my bottom line? Still not happening.
I think to answer, and you're totally right on that. I think to answer, I don't see it as a tipping point as much as kind of road signs. And a big road sign for me was like Detour was when, what was it, 2 months ago or something, when Fox announced they're reducing their ad load. And, that's sort of, to me, was a beating our chest a little bit, that if we can't beat them, join them, you know. And you see other mega networks following in those footsteps. So then the question comes, okay, you can reduce your ad load for the viewer experience, of course, but then from a content perspective, does that mean it's premium commercials? You're watching less commercials, less time, so they're not longer. So you still have that 15-second or 30-second now window to create something compelling and engaging that, you know, your viewer's not getting up and going to get a snack or going to the loo or doing whatever they're doing, and they're actually engaging through, you know, a certain time. So for me, I think it's things like that I don't see that there's going to be a sea change other than in the pipes, and that's going to be a sea change, but
I think there is a sea change right now. I mean, look at the power of what Netflix did to Fox, right? Fox getting acquired by Disney, now they're in a battle with Comcast. Disney is now going to their SVOD service and literally have completely reorganized their organization to do a subscription on demand service. How that's going to affect advertising a year, 2 years, 5 years from now. I mean, if that's not an alarming thing, then I don't know what is in terms of where the market's going.
Well, to that point, when Fox announced that they were going to go more digital by giving up, you know, reducing their advertising dollars coming in, that was correlated also, Rupert and those guys, to figure out how can we offset or sell some of our assets, and now it's become a feeding frenzy. As it relates to Disney making a play for, we're gonna take all our stuff off of Netflix and all these other places and create our own OTT service. We'll see. Warner Brothers tried that with their whole situation. That didn't fare too well, but we'll see.
well, but I just want to say, just to be clear on the ad load on, you know, so for instance, a 22-minute show, which is the amount of content on a 30-minute slot, you know, now it's 24 minutes. So, you know, that's do the math for an hour, right? Do the math for a feature. So what does that mean to not just the viewer? What does that mean to the content creator, the publisher, that whole ecosystem around that? So, you know, do you, and how do you activate and implement that one? You know, do you go back and recut? Do you shoot additional? These are all questions happening right now in the industry. So do you bring in like an old piece of content, let's say, that still has great numbers, great viewers, and now you bring in somebody to host it so you can fill 2 more minutes of time for that because they've decided that they're going to have a better user experience and they're going to cut the ad load time. So but I think that is a whole nother...
That assumes it's fitting into the ancient MVPD, everything is on a half hour.
Right.
I think that maybe they still insist for whatever reasons, but if you're doing, you know, digital first or whatever, you can just be absolutely free form. There's no news break, there's no nothing. Yeah. Just I think that's a problem of their own imagination, actually.
So I just want to make 2 comments on what my colleagues here have spoken about. So we actually did some economic analyses on direct-to-home bundles. What if we built an engine that would analyze what would happen if Disney went direct to consumer with our bouquets of channels, and then we looked at Warner Brothers doing the same thing, and then we looked at, you know, minor players like Discovery Network, well, minors, not so minor, but by comparison, Discovery Networks. And we found that Disney was, in fact, the best positioned. I mean, for a number of reasons.
Their assets.
Their assets are across the board. I mean, between ESPN, ABC, you know, Playhouse, Disney, etc. The package is very all-encompassing in terms of genres and would appeal to families. So, so definitely on that.
So this tipping point question and CPMs and what have you, some of that is ultimately going to be a function of us as consumers making choices, what services we subscribe to, et cetera. So a question I have there then is, so if whether you're Netflix or a new entrant over the top like Disney, or you're a pay TV provider today, what are you doing, or what do you need to do in this crowded marketplace to maintain or grow share?
Make alliances. I think direct to consumer is basically not such a viable proposition unless you are Disney and company like that that has a series of assets. Just get into partnerships. I mean, we were talking about best in class earlier on. I mean, look at what Comcast is doing with Netflix, for instance. Look at the integrations, brilliant, especially with the Xfinity X1 platform. So it's trying to do it directly to consumer, owning the consumer is a very romantic concept. But we like to follow the money, maybe because we're part of Marshall School of Business at USC, and business is paramount to how we dissect research. But basically, in this environment, it is still a good idea to partner with larger players, as long as you can obviously cut a deal that is significant for you.
I think those 4 areas I mentioned earlier, curation, personalization, community, and commerce on a D2C model works wonderfully, especially in a tech world. Look at major companies that have disrupted a lot of other incumbents, and then partnerships on the with the larger distributors if need be. I still think the D2C model with those 4 areas, you're going to get a higher margin for your content. You take a piece of content and you create those 4 areas around there, and then you have a distribution play on Amazon. Just the personalization and the community just around that, you know who your people are, who you're talking to, who you're interacting with, what's going on. Your margins will be higher per, piece of content, as opposed to, I'm going to sell it to Netflix. I'm not going to own any rights. I might have a 2-year, 3-year deal. They're not going to give me any numbers as far as how many people saw it, and
So you found that to be the case? You've actually weighed an advance and a guarantee from Netflix against the revenue that you've obtained by going independent?
I find ownership always works better on IP. It's renting versus buying. I would much rather own. I would much rather own my asset over the life of it, as opposed to getting a nice chunk of, 2, 5, 10, 20 mil for some content right now, but I don't own it anymore. I'd much rather own it over the life, because then I can do what I want to do with it multiple ways.
If you're well-funded, you can go that route.
Yeah, and I agree that we've failed many times launching an OTT platform because it is so incredibly difficult. We launched 420 TV, but that was so in a time of sort of this niche, so that had a chance to be successful, and it's doing well. It depends what your ambition is. If you have a global ambition, direct-to-consumer can work, and the reason why Netflix is so powerful right now that people don't understand is Paramount sells their movie to them. They control all of the localization, the captioning on that content. Mm-hmm. So they own it, flat out own it. Paramount has lost the lifetime value of that unless they pay a lot of money to get it back. Mm-hmm. So if you have global ambition to be a true sort of content network, understand the power of your localization strategy, your distribution strategy internationally, and focus that as an opportunity to get to a consumer. Don't always think you just got to deliver to the U.S. market. Mm-hmm. I think you guys, I think there's a lot out there, and it's not as daunting as you think it is.
True.
So I want to open it all up to you all in a moment for questions that you have, but maybe just one final question over to the panel, and that would be sort of thinking about video producers or distribution services and the advice that you might have about sort of like an innovation that's out there today. This is all about innovation in the package and technology. An innovation that's out there today that they should kind of really like run with over the next year.
So cloud is a major innovation around distribution, and we're focusing on IMF, which is a video format that is enabling you to deliver one file format to anywhere in the world and not have to build multiple forms of that asset, right? So I'm not going to get into the technical stuff around it, but as a company at OwnZones, our sole focus on the R&D is to push IMF to enable content owners to develop an asset for global distribution without having to build or create 50 transcode of different ProRes files. So that's, for us, is a huge focus around innovation.
I'll just that's what we're looking at from a content creator perspective. We have a lot of interest from other countries that are interested in either consuming content that we've already created or to create shows for them from our point of view and our way of making content. And we have to look at the value proposition of is it worth it or not because of all the problems when it comes to all the tech stuff you're talking about, the coding and the compression and all the everything like that. So that's the delivery system part of it is really what I'm thinking about right now. Because yes, we're a global society, but when it comes to actually getting that content in front of those eyeballs and then being able to measure, monetize, and do all the stuff we're talking about right now, if you can't get it in front of them, you can't do any of the other stuff. So I think that's key.
For us as commerce partners, a lot of our content is built up to actually sell items that people are watching instantly and have them delivered to them. And so all of our content, all of our commerce partners, like the Instacarts in India and whatnot around the world, that's where we believe the content is a marketing ploy for the commerce availability of things that are actually in the shows. We believe that's a bigger item. As long as, that's why yes, I love Google, very long on it, but I think Amazon ultimately will be the winner because as long as human beings want stuff, as opposed to things to watch, and someone has a market to sell them stuff, they'll always win.
So a general comment from a content provider's perspective, and perhaps I will appear to contradict myself or my fondness for Netflix that I expressed earlier, which is not really true. So don't make exclusive deals with anyone, including the giant in the room, unless you've done financial projections, because as was stated by some of my colleagues on the panel, you obviously, you get a lot of money, present value is great, but then you have basically forsaken your back end. So you need to be very attentive to that fact.
Yeah, the one area I would look at, which is a perennial one, but I think it's made some leaps and bounds and improvement over the last maybe couple of years, is digital ad tech, and both from the plumbing insertion, making nice, clean ads at the right exact time, frame accurate, just like TV's been for the last 30, 40 years. But also the analytics that go with that ahead of time, and also just proving to the point your ad was successfully viewed all the way through. That technology has matured remarkably, I think, in the last few years, and that's your path to the tipping point coming sooner if you can get ahead of the curve on that.
Great, thank you. So to sort of sum that up, I heard a few tech-related items. IMF, by the way, am I the only one who thought that was something from Mission Impossible? Isn't that the same? Yeah. I'd not heard that one before. So technology solutions or innovations related to the packaging of the media and the digital ad insertion, no exclusives. So the business practices, no exclusives, and commerce partners, and then use of analytics. So those would be the things to be long or to look forward to over the next year. Great, cool. So maybe now open it up to the group here, and I think we've got 7 to 10 minutes or so. We can run through any questions that you all have, and there's one right here.
So from a consumer perspective, the splintering of all of the different direct-to-consumer packages, you get HBO Go subscription, you get an Amazon Prime subscription, Hulu, you're kind of all over the place, you have to log into all these different places to watch. The old way, although it was annoying in many other ways, it was simple in that you would turn on your TV, you'd have the same platform, see all the places, and you'd have the same subscription instead of having to go around. Do you ever think that some sort of service or we're going to get to a point where someone's working with everybody so someone can buy it from one place and then be able to watch from one place?
It's been tried and failed for reasons that are inherent to the business constructs that, You know, a lot of players don't want you to leave their ecosystem in favor of you finding something somewhere else. I mean, it's, you know, crudely put, that's the case.
And and the other problem is that you can't have a third party doing it unilaterally. It's technically blocked by DRM and copyright protected, if not encrypted on the metadata too. So unfortunately, a third party can't even legally try. So I agree it's a sad situation, but that's how it is.
There's been some attempt, I don't know a whole lot about this, but there's been some attempt that's sort of an intermediary step, which is more of a universal login. Right. You know, because that's where there's...
Partial fix,
yeah, that's a partial fix, exactly. That's where, I mean, who in this room has been upset because, damn it, you gotta like log on again, and what's my password for this app versus that app or whatever. So, you know, and then you lose the viewer. I mean, ultimately, it's about losing the viewer, and so
yeah.
So it's more of a, but it sounds like it's more of a business issue stopping it than a technology
Well, there was
issue.
an attempt by the FCC to deal with this, which failed. And it's
Universal Remote?
No. It was called DCAST or something. I was part of the committee. I can't even remember the name now. It was 4 years ago, and of course, with the change of government, it's not only dead, it's really dead. So, and it's only applied to MVPDs anyway, although Amazon and Google were on the committee, so I guess they might have suspected they might have been asked to do the same. And the idea was actually to open up the metadata, open up the video in DRM, and allow any third party, TiVo was an example of a third party who was pushing hard on this, to make their own guide and fill it with any mix of anything that you signed up for. But that died.
Do you think we'll stay segmented?
Well, the business, you know, the technology can be fixed if there's business need to. So it's all about the business, and everybody wants to keep their little silos protected, or groups. I mean, I think Netflix and Comcast have got a duopoly going between them. Not a duopoly, but a frenemy thing going on between each other. But you know, that's a very rare example.
Okay. How about back here?
So it's a question, I think it goes to Josette, but it's like everybody. Like every one of you for the last question that was asked, were giving like, you know, the perspective of the consumer, the perspective of like of each side of that matter. But like in the end of the day, we know that we're in a positional place. And the question is, if you see a picture of like what it's gonna be like, then like, you know, we can expedite that process, because like everybody trying to get these bits and pieces of like where the process is now. And the question is where it's heading, like, you know, like in Netflix, like filmmakers will still need to make money, and with the ads, like the platform will still need to make money. So it's like, where is it going business-wise? Because it's like, it feels like we are very concentrated and very like what is happening now. It's like, where is it headed? Like, where do you see it headed?
It's not going to be clean for a long time. I mean, everybody's meddling in everybody else's business right now, as we described earlier, right? The OTTs launching their own bouquets of channels, right? Skinny bundles, while the MVPDs are becoming virtual and becoming OTTs. So, yeah, it's really going to take a while. I think the future lies in alliances between OTTs and MVPDs, a la, again, Comcast.
So actually, maybe just like a show of hands, or who thinks will be, everybody, let's just say, who's number 20, more than 20 or fewer than 20 sort of like over-the-top services in the future, 5 years from now? What do you think? Oh, who's got more than 20? Who says more than 20?
That.
Everyone?
More than that.
Like 20 viable, okay. Does anyone say less than 20?
It's going to be the same thing like cable TV.
So you think kind of it's going to collapse down? Yeah. All right.
Consolidation.
Yeah.
It won't be the same technology.
Delivered a different way.
It won't be what you're calling.
Okay. I think there's some hands sort of in the middle before. Other questions? Yeah.
So there seems to be a shift right now, noticeably, especially on the publisher side, about migrating from an ad-based model revenue stream to a subscription-based model revenue stream. And it seems like everyone's kind of hopping on that bandwagon right now, which, as it seems, is rather frustrating because I'm using a lot of the content. But be a viable option before they try and figure out the next big or money-making option? Because, you know, as far as the consolidation or the, I guess, reduction of ad loads on TV networks with the, you know, decreased viewership of big events like Super Bowl and Oscar events, it's hard to rake in those $5 million, I guess, ticket prices. But then they're going to migrate that away to programmatic ad buys, so they can still get the same amount of brands involved, but less viewership. So anyway, moral of the story is migrating away from ad models to subscription-based models. What do you think is next, and how long do you think the subscription-based model is going to last?
Well, I think there's a lot of next, and I think what you're sort of talking about is you know, a bit of what I said earlier. You know, you've got a piece of content. How do you monetize that? What are, you know, do your wagon wheel, you know, put the content in the middle with the spokes going out and roll it around in a 360-degree environment. I mean, what are those revenue streams that are attached to that content? So, you know, you may look at that business model and what's the mix? Is it more, is there more revenue in an experiential live event, you know, that's connected, that has, you know, merch attached and, you know, like you were talking about. So, you know, is the content the loss leader? You know, so you have to really, it goes maybe giving a bit of a deeper dive into what I was saying earlier, but ultimately, what's the goal with that content? You know, what's your business model attached to it? You know, there's a lot of people out there, particularly agencies, that are creating content specifically for programmatic. That's all. That's the only place it's going to go, right? So, and they're fine with that. You know, it's a recurring revenue model. So it depends on what is the model. So I don't know what's next. I think that there's a lot of next, and I think the sentiments and norms of the viewers are gonna let us know.
CBS did something interesting with their All Pass, which I think they're just raking in money. They're taking the same programs that they make ad dollars, premium ad dollars on their networks, and then they sell you a digital subscription package that you have to pay for, and they're selling ads to the advertisers. I said, that is winning. That's winning.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the business I want to be in. I'm getting money from the subscriber and the advertiser for the same content. That's winning.
Yeah, but you're talking about a major player, and I totally agree with you. I mean, it's fascinating to see how the dollars flow back, right? I mean, there's a reason why the industry, you know, moved over to SVOD, because it's a predictable revenue flow, right? Okay, so people who were in the industry 20 years ago, like myself, I mean, remember the early days of OTTs, and a lot of services were launched with advertising and failed miserably because it was just pennies, right? I worked for Cookie Jar Entertainment at the time. We had a kids service, which is very compelling with our best franchises, and I'm still bound by confidentiality agreements, but we basically got pennies back from the marketplace in spite of our relationships with large players. So it's not tenable. I mean, basically history demonstrates that, you know, if something doesn't work, then it doesn't work. Then, you know, different avenues are being pursued.
So I think we have time for one last question. Who's got? All right.
Well, Martin, I've been a little distracted, so if you talk about this, forgive me. But you know, I remember being here in Digital Hollywood. I've been coming for many years, but maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and there was a lot of talk about people being able to order products, right? You know, as they're watching, they see a pair of shoes and they can touch the screen, order it right there. That seems, I don't hear a lot about that anymore. I know I pitched Amazon a couple of programs, and they liked them because they said, well, this is how we sell those shoes. There wasn't really any connection between the program and immediate ordering. What's happening in that realm? Is that a viable revenue structure?
That's actually what My Choice is. It's completely focused on buy what you see immediately in TV. I wasn't even trying to rhyme. Yeah, but yeah. So literally, a possible reason why it has failed in the past is because you have all these different walled garden silos of groups competing for money, who owns what, the content. So I'll give you an example. You're watching a Super Bowl or you're watching some show and some person sees Coca-Cola. Well, if that technology provider does a deal with a studio, the studio may want a piece of that revenue when a person goes and buys that Coca-Cola or they order that pair of shoes. And so they're always asking for permission, and it's all these different contracts, and studios work. I think the executives are every 3 years, they're in and out, and depending on what deal was signed, and then you're trying to, a studio believes that any content that's seen on TV, once it goes out into the broadcast, we own it. Well, the fact of the matter is, the consumer is consuming that piece, so you don't own the shoes or whatever the person is choosing to buy, or the shirt or the hat, or the merchant makes the most of that money. So it's just being that intermediary between us and the merchant, or becoming the merchant, or becoming a warehouse and whatnot. So
I just would say two things about. So Instagram is doing that pretty successfully right now. So if you're on Instagram and you look and you see a little white dot, on something, you can click to purchase, you can swipe to purchase. And then, there's Curate, which is, I think they announced their brand and name change 2 months ago or something, which is the company that is HS, years ago, Barry Diller started, HSN, QVC, Zulily, Frontgate, I can't remember all those. But, gosh, I consulted for them for three years worth of contracts in a row, and this was, 10 years ago at HSN when they brought me in as a content creator saying, we've amassed this giant audience, we have people who want to buy, they've got accounts, it's, one-click purchase at that point even, and they said, but we need content because we're going to lose our audience. We don't want them just here shopping, we want to engage with them. We want her to feel special, we want her to, see how the clothes look on her, all this stuff. So now that's nothing new, and your companies do that. But, that was a revolutionary thing 10 years ago that was happening. But, what they've done now with Curate is they've amassed all those audiences across the verticals that they own. And it's all about engaging with content and making purchases.
I'm thinking more in the sense of traditional linear programming, which is...
Oh, sorry.
No, that's helpful enough, but I'm thinking, will the consumers not, they're not going to want to interrupt their program and buy something, come back to it later.
I don't see that happening.
Our model works with linear TV, and our studies have shown individuals who still watch TV or video on a monitor, oftentimes are sitting there with their phones, and they're kind of engaging with their phones while still consuming this content. Hence why I'm curation, personalization, community, commerce.
Yeah. Right. Well. Yeah. So. I think to keep to the schedule, we need to adjourn. But I do want to say, by the way, to your question, you can get your Aquafina over at the cafe right around the corner. And right, so click it. Right. Thank you all for coming to this panel, and thank you, panelists.
How long you been over at Enzymes? 2 years. Okay. I remember when you guys were.